Snow screamed under Joe Labelle's boots. The wind cut sideways, sharp as broken glass, biting through fur and wool as if they were paper. Joe pulled his coat tighter and squinted into the white haze ahead of him. Angikuni Lake was right where it had always been. The village should have been too. But something was wrong. No smoke rose into the frozen sky. No dogs announced his arrival. No voices carried across the ice. Joe Labelle was a trapper. He lived in silence. He understood it. But this silence pressed back against him, heavy, expectant. He stepped into the first igloo. A pot sat over a fire pit, blackened and cold. Burnt stew clung to the bottom, its smell faint but unmistakable. Nearby, a piece of clothing lay unfinished, a needle still threaded, frozen in the fabric as if the hands that held it had simply stopped existing. Joe felt the hairs on his neck rise. People don't leave like this. Not here, not ever. He moved from shelter to shelter. Each one told the same story. Meals abandoned, tools untouched, belongings left behind as if their owners expected to return within minutes. But no one did. By nightfall, Joe Labelle understood one thing with chilling certainty. Everyone at Angikuni Lake was gone. Angikuni Lake sits deep in the Canadian Arctic, far from roads, far from cities, far from help. In 1930, it was one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. This land does not allow mistakes. The people who lived here were Inuit. Their knowledge of survival wasn't learned from books or maps. It was inherited, passed down over centuries of brutal winters and endless night. They knew when to hunt and when to wait. They knew how to read ice that could kill a stranger in seconds. They knew that survival depended on preparation, planning, and respect for the land. Leaving without supplies wasn't a risk, it was a death sentence. And yet that was exactly what appeared to have happened. Kayaks sat idle along the frozen shore. Rifles leaned against walls. Food caches were full. Fur clothing, the difference between life and death in this climate, remained behind. There was no sign of panic, no evidence of violence, just absence, as if the village had been erased. Joe traveled for days to report what he had found. When the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived, they expected exaggeration. They didn't find it. They found confirmation. The officers documented every detail. Empty homes, cold fires, no footprints leaving the village, not even from children. Snow around the settlement lay smooth and undisturbed. Then they turned their attention to the burial grounds. What they discovered there unsettled even men accustomed to death. The graves had been opened, not torn apart by animals, not collapsed by weather. Opened, and every grave was empty. No bones, no remains, no explanation. Nearby, another grim scene waited. 7 sled dogs were found dead at their posts. They had not been killed. They had starved. Food was close enough for them to smell it. Fish and meat lay stored nearby. Yet the dogs had been left tied, slowly weakening, until the cold finished what hunger began. That detail alone raised a terrible question. Why would anyone abandon the very animals they depended on to survive? Why wouldn't they come back? The RCMP expanded the search. Miles turned into days. Days turned into weeks. They found nothing. No bodies frozen beneath the snow. No temporary camps. No signs of migration. It was as if the people of Angikuni Lake had vanished into thin air. And then there were the stories. Other trappers spoke quietly of strange lights in the sky that night. Blue, pale, moving without sound. Not like stars, not like fire. They hovered, they drifted, they watched. Official reports dismissed these claims as imagination or auroras, but those who saw them insisted the lights moved with purpose. Against the wind, against reason. Theories emerged quickly. The simplest explanation was mass migration, that the villagers had left seasonally and records had failed to capture it. But it didn't hold up. Migrating Inuit did not leave behind weapons, food, or tools. They didn't abandon sled dogs. They didn't dig up their dead. Others suggested famine or disease. Yet there was food. There were no remains, no signs of sickness, no struggle. Then the theories grew darker. Some believed the villagers were taken, not by neighboring tribes, not by authorities, but by something unknown. In Inuit oral tradition, there are stories of beings that exist at the edge of reality, entities that move between worlds, hunters that take humans when conditions are right. To some, Angikuni Lake fit the pattern too well. Others looked upward, the blue lights. Long before the modern language of UFOs and abductions entered public consciousness, witnesses were already describing something they couldn't explain. Something that arrived, something that departed, taking an entire community with it. There is another theory, quieter but no less unsettling, that the truth was inconvenient, that the story was smoothed over, labeled unreliable, filed away, because some mysteries don't fit neatly into reports, and some answers are worse than questions. Over time, the Angikuni Lake disappearance faded into obscurity, debated by historians, questioned by skeptics, remembered by few. Today, the lake remains. The village does not. Only ice stretches where homes once stood. Only wind moves where voices once echoed. No memorial marks the loss. No final explanation closes the case. Just a question frozen in time. If an entire village could disappear without leaving a trace, what else has history chosen to forget? And what still waits unseen in the dark corners of the world? If you want to uncover the stories history tried to erase, enter the archive. Subscribe to the Velvet Archive, because some mysteries don't want to stay buried, and some silences are trying to tell us something.